So how do we determine whether we actually have to pay zakat? What is the threshold above which it suddenly becomes liable? So the way that we pay zakat today in the West is obviously very different to how it used to be. The primary kind of store of wealth was animals and land and so on. And so the items would be weighed and the foodstuffs would be counted and animals would be counted, and you take one for each X, Y, Z. And that's something, of course, we'll cover in detail in the detailed class version to the issue of zakat. But today, most folks don't have that. Certainly in the West, it's all cash or money in accounts that is held. And we have to basically, like the income taxes and the other taxes that we pay to our governments, same principle. If you earn above a certain amount, then you are taxed and you have a certain tax-free allowance as such. Every country has that as part of their taxation system. And likewise in Islam too, that threshold is called the nisab. Now, what's interesting is that in our current time, we have to make a decision on which one to choose, because theoretically there are two, a gold value and a silver value, both actually from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, with the silver one actually also having quite an established hadith basis, even though gold is the one which is most popular and it was the one that was most commonly used by the companions, and the original gold coin, original dinar that was minted, it would then lead to zakat being calculated easier. In our current time though, the prices of gold and silver have changed drastically. So historically, these used to be quite similar, not the same, but similar. But since then, the price of silver has crashed. And so that would mean that without any exaggeration, if you decide to choose the gold price, you have 10 times more, 15 times more higher a threshold than if you use the silver price. For example, right now, the nisab, the threshold, if you were to use gold, would be around about £3,500, about £3,600. Meaning, if you have under that, if you had £3,000 savings, you wouldn't need to pay zakat. If you have above that, then you would, if you're using the gold threshold. But if you're using the silver threshold, then it's literally 10 times less. It's about £350, £360, because silver's value is so much less compared to gold. And today then the question is posed, which one do we choose? If you're looking for your own self-interest, then you can obviously see that the desires would lead to gold, because that way you'd be able to have more money and not have to pay zakat upon it or pay the alms tax upon it. And that's just our attitude to tax. Don't want to pay it. Don't want to give it to them, etc., etc. And that, that's a natural reaction, because we often are taxed to death. The two most certain things, right? Tax and death. And they are linked because they are literally, absolutely rinsing us at any opportunity. Hidden tax, stealth taxes, subtle taxes, and every single thing that we do. And we also know the corruption that exists. We also know that it's used in areas that we don't want, on haram actions as well. And so there's a huge reticence for us to want to give to those kind of authorities. But zakat is very different. We're giving it to people who genuinely deserve it. We're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's an act of reward. It's an honor for us to do that with our money, to purify our money and to bless our money. From the meaning of zakat is to increase our wealth as a result of actually giving that sadaqah. And we know that charity never diminishes from wealth, let alone zakat, which is an obligatory form of sadaqah. And so, therefore, to go for the silver one, taking the lower threshold, would mean that more people will pay zakat. And is that something to be proud of? Yes, it is, especially in a community that can afford to, especially in the West when we earn more, comparatively speaking, to the rest of our brothers and sisters around the world. It is very well established authentically in hadith. There's an ijma' of the companions that it can be used as well. And when we look at it today, the political and social reality makes sense that we go with the lower threshold. We increase the amount of Muslims paying zakat. We increase the amount of zakat therefore being paid, without really only 2.5% of your wealth, it making major impact upon you. And so I advise that we take the silver threshold and that take that lower threshold, and that we all understand the matters and the issues that surround how we make these decisions, so that you're actively involved when you give your zakat, that you're informed, that you're part and parcel and invested in the process, so that your worship, your sacrifice right here, right now, is more understood and appreciated by you, so that it's more accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. More information, of course, on this in my upcoming class on zakat.